This is Peggy Merkur from the Avontuur. I'm on my Voyage 5. Voyage 5 means this is the Voyage 5 of the Avontuur from Timber Coast. And I am about to reach Guadeloupe. I'm on a sailing vessel with a special cargo, a cargo which is fair trade, organic, and it is on mission zero. Mission zero means without CO2, and this means we are on a mission. We are not there yet, but we are close. And with your support out there, we are getting closer and closer for a fair trade world, for a globalization which needs to be changed. And what this change can be about and what it needs to be changed, it's on you. Everybody is reliable, especially you out there. And now my next interview is with Athena and Jennifer. They are movie makers and they are doing this journey because of their research for their next movie. What it is about and what the journey means to them, you will hear right now with Peggy Merkur. If you need some further information, you can have a look on my blog. It is www.peggymerkur.blog. Enjoy and have a good day out there. Hi Jennifer, hi Athena.
Hello, Peggy.
Good afternoon, Peggy.
Where are we sitting right now?
In the dinghy. Our dinghy is called Bob because he likes to bob along the surface of the water in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
Well, I will just clarify, we're not in a dinghy in the water. The dinghy is on a ship. So this is a safe endeavor. We're on a ship which is soon to arrive in the Caribbean. So it's still in the Atlantic, but getting very close to the Caribbean islands.
How did you get on this ship?
Well, it started a couple of years ago when a wild Irish Atlantic salmon smoker, who's become sort of a mentor for us because she loves the sea and the salmon so much, first told us about Timber Coast and Tres Hombres and the whole concept of cargo under sail. So we applied and there was no space, and we wrote a whole proposal to Cornelius about our project, our vision, and then the trip was not meant to be, and then all of a sudden we were on, and here we are. So it's been a long time coming.
Why do you wanted to be on this ship?
For a couple of reasons. Well, for me, to be honest, the most important reason was that for the last 3 years, I've been getting this very strong message that I need to go to sea. I need to be in the middle of the sea in order to begin to understand what it is, why it's so important, why it's calling, what is the home of the wild Atlantic salmon, what is it that connects us. I had also previously been on a container ship crossing the Atlantic, and my experience of living in proximity with the sea, and it's much more removed because you're so high up. Here we're very intimate with the sea. You know, we started this interview and a wave said hello. Was that this is like liquid consciousness. This is like a womb. This is what surrounds and holds us. There's another one.
We're
This
getting
is
wet
a
again.
blessing. And most of us aren't even aware of it because we see little glimpses of it from the beach, or we buy fish in the supermarket. We don't have any relationship to it. And when I began my own research and found out the levels of exploitation, I was even more intrigued to humbly come into some sort of relationship with it, to understand it. And it's a very key, a very vital piece of the film.
So you're talking about a film. I already introduced you as movie makers. So Athena, what did you make to join this kind of project, and how did you get into this idea?
Well, the film has been a long-term project. My mom works as a writer and director, and I am a musician by training and by practice. And I've been helping out with films, with her film, her previous film, which has already been made, and with this new film for the last 3 or 4 years. And then in last September, I really jumped on board and started taking a much more creative role in the writing, and we spent a solid year writing the story and writing the script. So that is the project that we're referring to, which has the sea as a very integral aspect. But we also had a little movie-related aspect that got us on this ship, which was a short little film we made just explaining why we wanted to do this journey, why we wanted to travel on the Avontuur, how it relates to our existing work and to the mission of Avontuur. So we made a little video which we put online as part of a crowdfunding campaign that we did in order to be able to fund this journey.
But I think most importantly, this all started with a vision about, now it's like 8 years ago, to create a cycle of films where women are the lead characters in the stories, but really exploring our feminine nature and our relationship to our home, which I think we've fallen out of relationship collectively. And it's become a relationship of what we can have, what we can get, and how fast, as opposed to living with our home, with one another, and with our primary home, ourselves. I think we've become very dissatisfied with ourselves, and I think part of that is that we're not rooted, we're not in relationship with this wonder.
How were your expectations before this journey? If you stick on these thoughts, you already told me, Jennifer. How was it before the journey, and how did it change already?
It's still changing, and I have to say, I don't know. I just know that there is a profound change that has occurred in each of us on this crew, affected by one another, but affected by this extraordinary power we live with every day. You know, you never stop hearing it. You're always seeing it. Every day it's a little bit different, and it's constantly changing. Its mood is different. But I have never experienced such power and presence in my life since we've been on this ship. And it's engendered an enormous respect on my part, that I'm a very small part in a much bigger picture. And I think when you're on the sea, there's nothing more humbling and more inspiring.
What are your duties during the day, during the ship day? We are sailing here together with 15 people, and there are 6 trained people, and we are kind of in a traineeship. And yeah, what it is about for you today? Is it boring? Do we read a lot? And are we lazy the whole day? What it is about for you to be on a ship? Is it a busy day? How would you explain it?
I've never cleaned so much in my life. I think we all look forward to maneuvers because it involves you in the actual sailing part, in the actual awareness around catching the wind and around trimming the sails and living with that power, that possibility. But we do a lot of work, whether it's, whether you're at the helm or whether you have your head in a toilet or whether you are helping with meals, but there's very little leisure time. I'd say the most leisure time is just sort of a natural social interaction that we have with one another. But it's full on. It's really 24/7, because even when you're asleep, you wake up and it's like slosh, slosh, and you hear somebody on deck, and it's full time. There are no days off, no fun days. It's every day's a Monday. And I feel that the sea demands this of you in such a majestic, incredible way. And we're on different watches, so Athena gets to watch the sunrise and I watch the stars come in.
So what changed compared to your day life at home about eating and sleeping? How is your sleeping time, and what do you eat? Do you eat more or less? How did it change?
I think everything has changed from my day life in general. In terms of natural rhythms, they shift because the watch system is a 4-hour on system and then you get a break, which means in my case I am awake from 3:30 in the morning and my watch finishes at 8 a.m. and then I have breakfast and then I go to bed, which is something I would never normally do. And my body has completely adapted to that. And then I sleep during the day until lunch. In terms of meals, they are a focal point of the day. We all gather for meals and we're very fortunate to have very high quality food and a very good cook on board. So the food is generally excellent. And I'm certainly, yes, I think particularly in the beginning, eating more than I normally would. I think that was also to do with the temperature. When it was very cold in the North Sea, we were all fueling ourselves. But yeah, I think I do tend to eat more than I would on land. Maybe because the rhythms are different, or it's just
But I
you're
think also
constantly
you're
in
constantly
motion.
adjusting. You're constantly adjusting your body, your legs, your balance.
Your body can never completely relax because even when you're lying in your bunk, you're still balancing yourself. Your body is still making sure you're not going to fall out of your bunk. And so you're never completely switched off. And that takes energy.
I think it's also been an extraordinary voyage because I think we've all come to feel that this is a crossroads. Why have these people come together? When you come together with a group of people, it's random. Either you're going to find people that you really like or people who you find very annoying. We've been extraordinarily fortunate in finding a very vibrant crew. There's a lot of humor on board and a lot of shared values, deep values, not just, oh, I'm committed to this ecological concept, but I think there's a lot of seeking going on this journey. Not just who am I, but what's happening on the planet and how can I participate. And I feel very strongly that we're participating in something together here. And it really hasn't come entirely into focus, but there's an urgency to it.
We received some special messages. We had extraordinary experiences till now. We picked up boat people and we saved them. We saved one person more than we are on board. There were 16 and this ship was not a ship, it was just a little boat. And now we are heading forward to a place which we don't know how we are about to receive. Because there is kind of a global breakdown and we had just received some messages, some spare messages, and you're a mother and daughter and you're doing a really interesting project. You're about to do a movie and I'm looking forward to watch that. Later on we will carry on where to watch it and but what do you expect now? Because usually your journey would about to be at the end right now, but what is going on right now on our ship and what are your thoughts as a mother, Jennifer?
I'm very grateful to be with my daughter. I have 2 other children and a husband, and I haven't a clue what's happening with them. I think one of the things that Athena and I kept saying to one another about our film right before we left was we need to up the stakes. In other words, we have to increase the urgency. And somehow the whole situation, and we don't even know what the situation is, has, by its very nature, created that urgency because we're living it. We don't know what sort of a breakdown there is. We're no longer these semi-objective filmmakers. We've sort of, in a funny way, come to the center of our own film. So I don't really know what's going to happen to the film. I don't know how we're going to make it. It depends on the extent of the global breakdown. But it's an ongoing, unfolding, I call it a pilgrimage. And I don't know if we're talking about survival. We don't know anything. We're right now reliant on these tiny emails that come through. And we're going to a place where we're not really welcome, which is a very strange thing. When we took the boat people aboard, I was made acutely aware of what statelessness, what survival means. And we're nowhere near there. We are so privileged. And yet all of a sudden something so essential has been taken away from us that I'm feeling more empathic toward what millions of people are undergoing all over the world and how we all might be in that situation sooner or later. And ultimately, what does it mean to be human, alive on this glorious planet?
And for me, it raises the question that we mentioned earlier about what is home? What is this home? Whether it is this planet or whether it is where you live, if you live anywhere, when suddenly you're faced with the possibility of not being able to return to a place, or posing yourself the question of where would you return to if you could return to that home, and what does that mean? And I think that's a big question, because we're being given information that, for example, different countries will bring you home. They'll make an effort to send out a plane and make sure that their citizens get home. But what does that actually mean? And I've been asking myself a lot, where do I want to be in these times? Whatever these times are, and who do I want to be with? And I would echo what my mum said about being very glad that we're together on this ship. But not just the two of us. I think this is an incredible collective of people who have ended up on this particular voyage. And for me, that was the big unknown, stepping onto this ship. I knew I couldn't imagine what the sea would be like, but I had a vague idea about it. But I had no idea who I would be sharing this journey with. And I was a little bit worried about it, because you are quite literally stuck in a fairly limited space with 13 strangers who could be awful people. And it could make this a nightmare. But we have been incredibly lucky.
And that we've also had our differences and our difficulties and have managed to work things out. And I feel like this is a little microcosm. You know, we are an island in the middle of the sea, dealing with a lot of what's going on. You know, we're dealing with waste questions. What do we do with our waste? What do we do with these jars? Is it okay to throw them overboard once the labels are off because glass is made of sand and you're sending it back to its home? But yeah, I agree with Athena. It's we've been extraordinarily lucky. And as we look forward in this uncertain time, we have created a family. And there's a lot of love on this ship, and that's been a huge surprise, a gift, because that's what's going to buoy us forward. It sounds cheesy, it sounds like something in a greeting card, but it's real.
It's real. The bonds we've created are real, but also the nature of being on a ship requires, for everyone's survival and safety, collaboration. And we live that on a daily basis. If we don't collaborate, this ship does not go forward. And we are living a metaphor. We are truly living a metaphor for how a small collective can work together in an incredibly productive and positive way.
And very quickly, perhaps you could say this about any voyage, I feel is particularly pertinent to being at sea, is that the social masks drop very quickly. So whoever is on this ship right now, that's who they are. There's no pretending. There's no place for pretense when you have to work together as intimately as we do, surrounded by such wonder, such force, such beauty, really.
What do you mean by force? What are your thoughts about the force we already had in our experiences?
It's just so much bigger than we are. It's like the force of life. And we think we know in our day-to-day lives, we think we know what it is to be alive. And this is just in your face. You know, I remember, I think it was in the North Sea or in the Bay of Biscay, being aft and all of you just seeing these shoulders of water rising up taller than I was. And it was like the sea was like looking in and saying, hello, I'm very big, are you? And yeah, it's not force in a threatening way. It's force in a wonder. It's life, energy.
What was your worst, or one of your worst moments on a ship?
Well, for me, hands down, it was the experience of seasickness in the North Sea, where I felt like a curtain came down and there was no more life. And we were being thrown around. And we were so new at our training that, I felt like a rag doll being thrown around and feeding the fish.
It feels
Like I did.
eternity. It feels like it will never end. And you just want it all to go away. And I remember thinking, okay, hell is a ship. And I'm stuck on it for the next 60 days.
But I don't think, for my part, I was never afraid. It was just, this is hell.
But in terms of your question of force, there are a couple of things I want to say. One is, on our very first night on this ship, I was already seasick. We had just reached the North Sea, and we had some force 8 gusts. And this was my first experience of force, when we went forward to sheet in the schooner sail so that we could control the ship a little bit more. And then suddenly there was this terrifying noise, and then one of the loudest sounds I have heard, just this booming and slapping and booming and slapping. And in the fog of my seasickness, I looked forward to see the staysail just flying free and just slapping and slapping and slapping, and this big splintered piece of wood, and the boom had just snapped. So that was a pretty sharp introduction to this is just the pure force of the wind. Another experience was when we were becalmed. The captain actually decided to douse all the sails. Our bosun rigged up a diving board and we all went swimming above a depth of 4,000 meters, it's just a concept. It was impossible to measure, but just to be swimming around and knowing that was quite awesome, really awe-inspiring.
And as gentle as the swells were that day, and we were becalmed, the power of those swells, you could barely swim against it. I was amazed at how insignificant my strokes were against, again, like this shoulder of water. Just, we're going to jibe now?
Oh, we're gonna jibe now. So we carry on later.
Excellent.
We do a maneuver. Let's carry on. Today is the 23rd. Yesterday we had our interview. Jennifer and Athena, the movie makers. And this is Peggy Merkur. We're sitting back again in Bob, our dinghy, on the Avontuur Voyage 5. And I'd like to carry on this point. What is work about on the ship? We had some points, but there is much more than you expect out there.
Work covers just about everything you can imagine. From a lot of cleaning duties, because we have to keep the ship with 15 people living on it. Got to keep it clean. It gets dirty faster than you can imagine, so whether that's sweeping the galley floor, mopping, cleaning the stove, cleaning the common sleeping areas, making sure the toilets are clean, it takes up a good amount of time in our watches. There are, of course, all of the sailing-related elements. Maneuvers don't actually happen that frequently because we are traveling long distances. We don't have to change our tack that often, so that's more of an exciting part of the day. Then there are things that we've been able to learn, how to use ropes, how to splice ropes, how to tie certain useful knots. Some knots that we actually use on a regular basis when we do maneuvers. For example, whenever we raise our topsail, you have to be able to tie a bowline knot or be able to bend in the sheet, so you have to get pretty fast at some of those things. So the watch involves that, but most of the watch we alternate taking turns at the helm, and that's actually the most important aspect of the watch. Some watches have more people than others. Some have fewer, so you have to balance that out, but usually each of us will be at the helm for about an hour before taking a break, and that takes a lot of concentration. You have to keep often a very specific course, but you have to be very vigilant. So you've learned to watch the sails, you've learned to watch the angle that the waves are approaching at, and we have these little telltale flags which show you the direction the wind is coming from, because you do get wind shifts, sometimes quite unexpected wind shifts, which could be pretty dangerous for the ship and for everybody on board if suddenly the wind shifts by more than 30 degrees, the boom will come swinging over, you'll accidentally jibe, and things can go very, very wrong, from ropes snapping to masts snapping. So we are all very focused when we're at the helm, particularly at night, because obviously there's reduced visibility and sometimes you can't even see the telltale flags because they're not illuminated, and you have to rely much more on your own senses. So
sometimes you can follow a star on a clear night, or a planet, which is particularly exhilarating, I think. It feels very ancient.
Do you feel under pressure because our whole mission is relying on the person who is steering the helm?
No, but it is incredibly important and does take a lot of focus.
I feel responsible, and I also would really not like to commit an accidental jibe. But some of the time, a lot of the time actually, depending on the conditions, it's a really fun place to be. For example, yesterday we had some big swells and it was just like surfing. And when you're at the helm, you really feel the way the ship moves, most of all, because you are controlling it. And you feel the ship be pushed by a swell, and you've got to get us back on course. And that's really the dance with the ship, when you really feel like you're interacting.
You can rise up on the top of a swell and feel like you're on the top of the world, and then be plunged down again. It is exhilarating.
Now it is pretty smooth, and we have a special situation right now. I've never seen the sails in these positions.
Well, gull winging is
Or I think we call it butterfly also in German, which means we have, instead of the sails being set on the same side, we have the main sail set on starboard side and the scooter sail set on port side. So they're spread out like wings so that the wind can come directly from behind us and push us forward.
Why do we need to do that? What kind of reason is behind that?
We're getting closer and closer and closer. We're on a very specific direct course to our destination. We are 17 nautical miles away, and we have a little bit of a deadline.
We have a time pressure. To get into port, we've been granted permission to come alongside from 8 o'clock in the morning, but our time permission there is very, very short. We are allowed to provision and then asked to leave. We're not allowed to go ashore, and we don't know how long this is going to take or how quickly we'll be on our way again. But we need to be there as soon as the permission is granted, which is 8 o'clock in the morning.
So, and in my opinion, this should have been the point where you were about to leave to go back home again. What is your current situation right now?
We don't know. As we approach Guadeloupe, we will have connection. So we'll be making phone calls and find out, through family members, what the situation is for repatriation. Our suspicion is that Guadeloupe, or the Caribbean in general, is not the best place for us to be. Probably end up being very isolated here and hard to get out. So it makes more sense for us to stay with the ship. We're not even allowed ashore anyhow at this point.
Why?
Coronavirus?
What kind of information have we about that? Why is it impossible?
We don't know. We have very little information, but from the bits and pieces we have received, it sounds like the beginning of a pandemic. And each country is trying to contain it, and it's hard to know how real it is and how much of it has been hyped by the media. There's no way of our knowing, but they've taken very, very extreme measures, and Guadeloupe and Marie-Galante are both part of the French Commonwealth, for want of a better word, and they're following French policy. And from what we gather, again, snippets from the ship owner, is France is on lockdown and curfew, trying to contain the virus.
So you don't know yet how to carry on with your journey, but at least you will stick to us, won't you?
Hopefully. We do keep receiving, every time we receive some information from Cornelius, it doesn't really make things any clearer. Today, one of the emails we received said no crew members will be repatriated, suggesting that were we to get off the ship tomorrow, there is no way for us to get home. Whether that's true or not, we don't know yet, but we do know that there are very few, if any, flights leaving from Guadeloupe, and hotels are either shut or in the process of shutting down, so there would be no place for us to stay. So that is definitely a factor. So for the time being, we are on the ship. We are welcomed on this ship. It is a very safe place to be. As soon as we get our emergency provisioning, we will be in a pretty good situation, and it looks like we're getting extra gas bottles as well. So as a little floating island of survival, the Avontuur is a good place to be.
What would you say is your greatest gift right now or further on?
I think the greatest challenge and potentially the greatest gift for all of us is to be as present as possible. We can't anticipate. We don't know what's around the corner. We don't know what has happened. And even if we get a little bit of information in the next 24 hours, we're then back on the sea. And so I think it's a huge gift as a Westerner to be forced to stay present and not worry, not panic. We have to be here. We have to run the ship. We have to continue to live and work with one another. And I think that's probably the greatest gift and the greatest challenge, but ultimately the greatest gift.
And I would add to that somehow being on a ship really emphasizes that, because you have to be incredibly present. I mean, we were speaking about being at the helm. You have to be so present and so focused, and also during maneuvers, but most of the time there's something to do that requires you to be here and now, to the extent that there is very little space for reflection. In the very little personal, private space and time that we do have to our free time, we're here, and we're here right now. And this vast sea is always changing and always very much the same, and always changing and always the same. And I think this starts to get under your skin.
Under my skin, in my opinion, and my thoughts about you staying is a great gift to me, because you're really great, and I really appreciate it that you might stay. I wish you, of course, all the best for your journey, and the journey is further going on. You won't leave the ship without anything. You've done some research. This was the point to get on this ship. So what are you about to do next? Where can we find some further information? Maybe there are some people who are interested out there and want to have a look what you've done earlier times and what the next movie will be about.
Well, the first film in the cycle is called She Sings to the Stars. So shesingstothestars.com tells you all about the film and where you can see it and what the vision was behind it. And in terms of the next film, everything has just changed. The whole journey has been informing the new film. Athena and I were able to finish the first draft of the script right before we came aboard. And neither of us has sat down and had the time to reflect or to review what we spent all that time creating. And I think by the time we get back to doing that, when we have that time, whenever we do get ashore, I think we'll find we have changed so much, and there's so much that we have yet to put into this film. And I think one thing I've mentioned to you, Peggy, that I think is becoming more and more important to me in relation to this next film is this idea of home. What is home? And the first thing you think of, it's where I come from or where I belong or what have you. And that has certainly come up in the last few days, because there's a sense of I want to go home and I can't. But part of this journey and part of the root of this film is what is home to all of us. And it is our planet, and it is this grand neighborhood we live in of paradise birds and flying fish, or an oak tree or a honeybee, and all these tiny parts that make up this whole green planet. And this journey is certainly making me reconsider my part in it.
So home means for all of us staying present on this planet and taking care for everything, not just for ourselves, just also for our environment. Do you want to add something, Athena?
Well, I think I mentioned in the previous part of the interview something about home, and I mean, this ship has become our home, and we've all adapted to it very quickly, and we have adopted it. And even though we're living in very close quarters, it feels like a completely natural place to be, believe it or not, even though in many ways we are in an alien environment. We are on the ocean. We are not creatures of the ocean. We are, of course, 70% water, but we can't survive in this ocean without the vessel that we're on. So it's potentially quite an aggressive environment in many ways, but it feels very comfortable. It feels like we've always been here. And time moves differently on this ship, so perhaps that has influenced the way that this place feels like home. And I would also add, apart from our relationship to our planet, to reiterate a little bit what I said yesterday, it's also the people. And so there are two sides to that. The group of people that we are here with, who we have created such strong relationships to, have created this sense of home. And that is also the bittersweet aspect of the separation that we have from the people we love, when we can see them again, when we'll be able to return to those places and to those people. That's the big question mark at the moment. It's not if, but it is certainly when.
But there will be the time, and we can rely on it, as we can rely on that the sun is rising. What is your spirit about?
I would say for the last film, the mantra was
Listen.
and anything is possible.
Anything is possible. Do you believe anything is possible is the very end of the film.
And I would say that was a recurring mantra, particularly when you're making your first very low budget independent film with all the challenges that come with that and many things that seem impossible. And we really believed that anything was possible. There is the recurring theme of listening to yourself, listening to your environment.
Listening to your heart. Which again sounds cliched, but I think if we do take a bit more time and stop and listen to that inner voice, which is that connection to something larger than the personality and to the environment, then I think anything is possible.
And I would add to that, anything is possible was definitely the key phrase of She Sings to the Stars. And I think in writing proposals about this current project, we came to a new place, which was everything is possible.
Yeah, and all of it matters.
I had a saying yesterday with one of our crew members, just to get back, and I know it's kind of a hard situation because it's really hard to have a choice right now, but if you making if you go to elect people, it's also to elect your future.
Yes, absolutely. I think in every moment there's a choice, and I think we've forgotten that we have those choices, that each of us matters, each of us can make a difference.
And every choice matters.
Every choice matters, no matter how insignificant you think it is, or no matter how insignificant you think the choice of one person is. It is significant.
And I would return with that to this idea of listening, because we are constantly making choices, even unconsciously. And we are often stuck in our heads with the options and not knowing which one, what do I choose? I go this way or go that way, and this can create a lot of anxiety and upset in people. And I feel, and I have found repeatedly in my life, that it is this aspect of listening, that you know which is the right choice. You know which choice you are going to follow. You just have to listen to it. You have to listen. Whatever that means for you, whether it's finding a quietness in yourself or following signs or things that are nudging you one direction or the other. To me, that is listening, and that's where the choices come from.
So, everybody out there, your choice counts. You are important in whatever situation you are right now. I wish you all the best. I wish you happy days as much as possible. Stick to your heart, stick to your believings, and be open for changes. All the best to you, just from deep of my heart, in whatever situation you are right now. Hopefully you will be fine. What do you say at the end?
Anything is possible.
I would say what our captain always says. Happy days.
So there we go. All the best to you, Athena and Jennifer. Where do I find you on the crowdfunding platform? This is my last question. How is the platform called?
If you go to gofundme.com, search for Atlantic Crossing, and you will find the information about this particular voyage, as well as the video that we produced explaining the reason we are doing this.
And also, I would just mention that we have a working title for the next film, and it is Am Ocean. And there's already a Facebook page that we just started as we left, just to sort of redirect followers from the previous film over to this. It's early days yet, but just to give you a sense, that's a point to find online.
Oh, we will stay in touch and I will follow you, definitely.
Thank you, Peggy.
Thanks, Peggy. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure to me. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.